everybody, thanks so much for crafting with me today. It's Mary from Mary Made Crafts. Today we're going to do a distress watercolor background. And as you see here, I'm smushing the distress inks to the right on my craft mat. And what I'm going to do is just take a regular watercolor or any paintbrush, and I'm going to do some watercoloring by just putting a thin line of each rainbow color in order down my distress watercolor paper here that I'm using. So as you can see, as I make my way down the rainbow, some of those colors just blend beautifully. And I get to the end here, and as I put that aside to dry, I realized I did not want to waste any of that distress ink there on the craft mat. So I'm just going to spray that with water, and I'm going to use another watercolor piece to pick it up. And that basically just smushing that on there so we can get a softer, less controlled watercolor look. And I get a little bit of mudding here, so what I do is just pick that up with a paper towel to get rid of that. And then I'm just trying to cover the rest of my paper with the rest of the inks. So if I didn't say, I am using Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper here for this project. So here they are, both done and dried, and they are ready to be used on a project. So you can see the difference there. One's very controlled and one is just free for all. Next, I'm going to use this stencil here that I have, and I love this stencil because it has a sticky adhesive background, but not sticky enough where it's going to ruin your project. So I use that, put that down on my project, and I'm using this Hero Arts white ink just to give a very soft overlay from that stencil. It's very subtle, but it's very pretty. So I do that for a little bit more interest on the project. Next, I'm moving into stamping. I'm going to use VersaFine Onyx Black ink for my stamping. You want a solid, nice ink for this because it is watercolor paper. So you want to get a good impression. You can also use your Misty if you have one to stamp multiple times if you need to. This ink set is from Tim Holtz. Sorry, the stamp set is from Tim Holtz as well. It's one of his vintage collections. And I think those are called baby breaths. Baby's breath? You know, you put in roses and things. I'm not quite sure. I don't have much of a green thumb. But so I just add some butterflies here as well to my project. I cut down that and the background paper from Lawn Fawn Stitched Rectangle dies. And next I'm going to use some Perfect Pearls to add some shimmer to the project. Right here I'm using a Impressions Obsessions stamp set. And this is going to be a sympathy card, so I just stamped my sentiment there on the front. Very easy. Right here I'm using some score tape for the Melon Mambo cardstock from Stampin' Up! Because it got a little warped when I used my Perfect Pearls. So I'm going to use this really strong adhesive score tape so that it lays very flat on my card base. And so that's, I find it works better when you put it right to the edge. And it works better than liquid adhesive for this. And then for the watercolor background piece, I'm going to use some foam tape, some 3M foam tape. And that's going to give me, it's going to minimize or eliminate the warping. And it's going to give me some dimension on the top of my card. So I decided to pop that up. And as you could see, that shimmer from the Perfect Pearls, I just love that stuff. It's so nice. You could buy it in the spray form, or you can mix your own with the powder. So here I'm just adding the top. So this next part I'm putting on sequins, and this is where the struggle is real for me for sequins. I saw someone on YouTube use their tweezers to place their sequins, and they just raved about what a great idea this was. And for 10mm sequins, it probably is. Or it's completely operator error, and I just can't do it. But first of all, does anyone else have the hardest time squeezing out this multi-matte medium? I love this stuff. But I feel like I have to be some sort of a bodybuilder to get that out, especially with my left hand, as I'm right-handed. But anyway, I figured it out. I got the adhesive out, and then I laid down my first sequence. It's the Pretty Pink Posh 10mm, and that one goes down very easy. But then I decided to use my tweezers to pick up this 3mm one. Did you see it fly away from me? And now I just have to pick up my fingers and put it back down. And so I said to myself, why not try again? if at first you don't succeed, well, I should have just left well enough alone, because I got it up with the tweezers, but then as you see, when I'm trying to put it down, it won't come off my tweezers. So it's just a mess. Basically, what I decided to do was put my tweezers down and go get my quick stick, because when things work, they just work. So I went back to that process there. And I'm just going to assemble the rest of my sequence here. So I'm not much of a not perfectionist, but a subject matter expert, I guess you would say, on how to place sequence. I kind of just watch what everyone else does, and I like the rule of 3, and I like to kind of mix the sizes. I think that's always a good thing as well, just to give it a little bit more interest, or just make it aesthetically pleasing to the eye. So I get my sequence down here, and that is pretty much how I'm going to finish up this card. I do something a little bit different for the next card, and it's kind of my new favorite embellishment, and you'll see that here coming up. So what I do is, for the second card with the softer, more or less controlled background, I take Glossy Accents. This stuff is called Crystal Effects because it's from Stampin' Up, but Glossy Accents is the other type of exactly the same thing. And I'm going to use some Wow Purple glitter. So I like this technique because I could make my embellishments any size I want. So I do my rule of 3 there, and I make one bigger and 2 smaller, just putting dots on. And then I'm going to put some of this purple glitter on. So the trick here is, because it's wet, the Glossy Accents is wet, if you decide to turn it over to get the extra glitter off, that's fine. Just do it quick, because you could change the shape of your embellishment. So unless you want to change the shape of your embellishment, then by all means. But I noticed that I still had a little bit of glitter here, so I'm just flicking that off just to get the excess glitter. And then just let that dry. But I love how it's just customized. You can use any glitter color you want, or you can just leave them clear, and that's great too. Before I go, I just wanted to give you a tip on how to clean up glitter. Sometimes it can be a mess, therefore leaving you not wanting to use it. But I just take one of those Swiffer jet cloths, and I cut it down into 4s, and it'll clean up the surface really nicely so that there's no mess with that glitter. So that'll do it for the cards today. On this card here, I used a different sentiment, but the same background that we just did in the video. And I matted it in black and put it on a pink card base. So that will do it. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe on my YouTube channel. Also, I'd love to hear from you, so please comment below if you have any input, advice, feedback. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Have a great day.